Hello, student. Good morning. Today I am going to start Chapter 8 History, the First Empire, the Mauryas. In this chapter, we are going to study about the Mauryan Empire. Student, have you heard about the Mauryan Empire? Have you heard about the Chandragupta, about the Chanakya? Okay, listen. Mauryan Empire in ancient India, a state centered at Patliputra, which is now known as Patna now. It is near the junction at the Son and Ganga rivers. It lasted from about 321 to 185 BCE and was the first empire to encompass most of the Indian subcontinent. The Mauryan Empire was an efficient and highly organized autocracy with a standing army and civil service. Now, the Mauryan Empire, also known as the Mauryan Empire, and was a geographically extensive Iron Age historical power in ancient India. It was ruled by the Mauryan dynasty from 322 to 185 BCE, originating from the kingdom of Magad in the Indo-Gangetic plain in modern Bihar, eastern UP. In the eastern side of the Indian subcontinent, the empire had its capital city at Patliputra. Now in this chapter we will study about the Alexander the Great. Who was he? I think you all have heard his name. Who was Alexander the Great? Alexander the Great is considered one of the greatest emperor in the world. He had conquered Syria, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Persian Empire before coming to India during the reign of Nanda dynasty in 326 BCE. Alexander entered India through its northwestern region, which was divided into many small kingdoms. Their rulers were always at war with one another. Alexander easily took control of most of these kingdoms. However, some rulers like King Porus fought bravely against Alexander's army. Though Porus was defeated in the battle, Alexander was greatly impressed by his bravery. He made an alliance with Porus. After his success in the northwestern region of India, Alexander wanted to further expand his rule across the Ganga in India. However, his tired army refused to cross the Ganga and fight with the powerful Nanda Empire of Magad. This forced Alexander to give up the idea of staying for long in India. He ordered his forces to return to their homeland Macedonia. Alexander died in Babylon on the way to Macedonia. He lived for only 33 years but built a great empire. The invasion of Alexander had a great impact on the history of India, as is evident from the many points. The varying small kingdom in the northwestern region of India suffered loss of power after their defeat by Alexander. This development created favorable conditions for Chandragupta Maurya to bring this region under his control after Alexander's departure. Alexander's invasion also gave a boost to the trade between India and Europe through the new land and sea route discovered by Alexander's army. Indian historians also benefited from the meticulous records left by Alexander historians about his war in India. These records helped in putting the Indian history of that period in a proper perspective. On the front, the cultural contact between Indians and Greeks resulted in the birth of the Gandhara school of art. This is an Indo Greek school of art. Now, Seleucus Nicator. In 305 BCE, Seleucus Nicator, the Greek general who succeeded Alexander in the eastern part of his empire, he was defeated by Chandragupta. Seleucus was one of the leading generals of Alexander. He was his friend and relative. While journeying back to Greek from India, Alexander reached Babylon. He fell seriously ill and died there in 323 BC. Alexander died without any heir, so his extensive empire was shared out of his three generals among themselves. Three parts: the Greek, the Egyptian, and the Asian. The first two parts came into the possession of Ptolemy and Antigonus respectively, while the third, that is the Asian part, fell to the lot of Seleucus. Seleucus wanted to regain these territories and to move further to east of the Indus. On courtly advice, Chandragupta married the daughter of Seleucus, Helen. Now Kautilya. Kautilya or Chanakya was an Indian philosopher, teacher, and royal advisor. Earlier, he was a professor of economics and political science at the ancient Takshila University. He was responsible for Chandragupta Maurya rise to power at a young age. As such, he is considered as the pioneer of field of political science and economics in India, and his work is thought of as an important precursor to classical economics. His works were lost near the end of the Gupta Empire. Chanakya managed the first Mauryan emperor Chandragupta rise to power at a young age. He is widely credited for having played an important role in the establishment of the Mauryan Empire. Chanakya served as the chief advisor to both emperors, Chandragupta and his son Bindusara. Now, Chandragupta Maurya. Who was he? He was the first ruler of the Mauryan dynasty, Chandragupta Maurya. Prior to his consolidation of power, the Indian subcontinent was divided into Mahajanpad. He gathered a small army and occupied territories in Punjab which had become weak due to Alexander's invasion. He overthrew the last Nanda ruler, Dhananand, in 321 BCE. He was supported by his minister Chanakya, who was also known as Kautilya or Vishnugift. Later, the rule of Magad passed into the hand of the Nanda dynasty. When Alexander the Great invaded India, Dhananand was the ruler of Magad. The great conqueror defeated Takshila and other smaller kingdoms. But he had no courage to proceed further and attack Magad. So he decided to return. His invasion weakened the kingdoms in Punjab and Afghanistan. So the time was apt when a larger empire could be formed. Chandragupta first conquered Magad. Next, he defeated Seleucus Nicator, a general of the Greek king Alexander. This way, he unified India and strengthened his control over other parts of northern India. According to Megasthenes Indica, the Mauryan kingdom was well administered under Chandragupta region. Chandragupta held all state powers and was the commander-in-chief of the army. The empire was divided into four parts or provinces, each under the administrative control of a prince. The four provincial capitals were Toshali in the east, Ujjain in the west, Suvarnagiri in the south, and Takshila in the north. And the imperial capital was Patliputra. Chandragupta was a just and benign ruler who held open courts to redress people grievances. Patliputra, Takshila, Kaushambi, and Ujjain were important cities in the empire and major trade center as well. After an impressive region of 24 years, Chandragupta embraced Jainism and probably ended his life by observing the Jain ritual of self mortification through fasting. Now, the sources which give us information about the Mauryan periods are the literary and archaeological sources. In literary sources, we can see Indica and Arthashastra, and in archaeological sources, Ashokan edicts and Sanchi Stup. Now, Indica. Firstly, we will see Indica. The Indica was written by Megasthenes, an ancient Greek historian, diplomatic, and Indian ethnographer and explorer. He was an ambassador of Seleucus at the Mauryan court in Patliputra. Indica is a book containing information about Mauryan India. The book which he wrote, original one, is lost, unfortunately, but its parts are still with us. Next is Arthashastra. It was written by Kautilya. It was also known as Chanakya and Vishnugupta around 350 BC. Arshad literally means scripture of wealth. To Chanakya, the source of livelihood of man is wealth, and that for a nation the wealth is in the form of both the territory or the state and its inhabitants with variety of occupation. Now the Ashokan edicts, archaeological sources. What do you mean I mean by edict? Edict means an official order or promulgation by a ruler. In this we will see Sanchi Stup, which is in Bhopal in MP. It was built in Mauryan Empire period. Sanchi Stup is a semi-spherical dome made of unburned bricks and stones. It was built to commemorate a sacred spot or event, or it had a spiritual body of Buddha containing his relics, hairs, articles, teeth, bones, etc. Stupa at Sanchi was built in 3rd century BC by Ashoka at Sanchi, 60 kilometers from Bhopal in MP. It has four gateways in four directions. Original stoop had wooden railing which was later replaced by stone railing. It had four gateways from all four sides. A sculpture on the gateways or every symbol in the structure denotes meaning or a story from Buddha, life or stories from Jataka tales. Buddha was represented in symbolic form like lotus wheel or throne under a peepal tree. It shows highest form of architectural and technical skills of the people of this period. Ashokan pillar Lumbini. It was in Lumbini, it was built by Ashoka, which is in Nepal. The lions that we see on our currency notes and coins have a long history. They were carved in stone and placed on top of a massive stone pillar at Sarnath. Most of our knowledge about Ashoka region is obtained from his rock edicts and inscriptions. His edicts were inscribed in Prakrit and not in Sanskrit because Prakrit was the language of the people in those days. About 30 kilometers from Gaya, the Ajivika caves have been discovered on the Barabar hills. They are so called because they were dedicated to the Ajivika thinkers who were contemporaries of Mahavira and Buddha. These caves bear inscription on their walls. They help us in forming an idea about the extent of Ashoka Empire. It also included Kaling, which had become the fifth province of the Mauryan Empire. The edict also tells us about his personal character in his famous Kaling edict. He says, "All men are my children, and I desire that they may enjoy every kind of prosperity and happiness." They also tell us about his religious beliefs and policy of religious tolerance. These pillars, edicts, and caves are renowned for their beauty. Though centuries old, their polish still shines despite the ravages of weather and rains. The lion capital of the Sarnath pillar has been adopted as the national emblem of our country. The edict also tells us that Pali or Prakrit and not Sanskrit was the language of the people. They were written in the Brahmi script. Ashoka's inscriptions were written in Greek in Afghanistan because the ordinary people there understood Greek well. Elsewhere, the inscriptions were written in Prakrit or Pali because that was the common language of the people. The edict also informs us that Ashoka's were friendly relation with many countries. Now the Mauryan Empire dynasty. This is the chronology. Let's see. The first emperor was Chandragupta Maurya from 322 to 298 BCE. Then successor of Chandragupta was Bindusara from 297 BCE to 272 BCE. After Bindusara's successor was the Ashoka the Great from 273 BCE to 332 BCE. After Ashoka, Dasharath was successor from 232 BCE to 224 BCE. After Dasharath, Samprati was the successor from 224 BCE to 215 BCE. After that, Salishuka, he was the successor from 215 to 202 BCE. Then Devavarman was the successor up 202 to 195 BCE. After that, Satadhanvan, he was the successor from 195 to 187 BCE. And the last ruler was Brihadartha from 187 to 185 BCE. So this is the chronology of Mauryan dynasty. Now Bindusara. We are going to now study about the Bindusara. Now Bindusara. Chandragupta was succeeded by his son Bindusara. He was also known as Mahasena and Amitra Ghat, who defeated the rulers of 16 kingdoms and added their lands to his empire. Under his leadership, the Mauryan Empire spread across the whole of the Indian subcontinent, except for Kaling, which is in present day Odisha, and a few kingdoms in the south. The Mauryas maintained friendly relationship with the kingdoms of the south. King Ashok. Ashoka the Great succeeded to the throne of Mauryan Empire after the death of his father Bindusara in 273 BCE. His coronation, however, took place in 269 BCE after he defeated his elder brother Susima. Mauryan dynasty reached the height of its glory under Ashoka's rule. He was the most popular ruler of ancient India. H. G. Wells describes him as one of the greatest rulers in the world he has ever seen. As a young prince, Ashoka was brilliant, ambitious, and ruthless. He ruled over his capital Patliputra. Revolts in Ujjain and Takshila were crushed by him. Like his grandfather Chandragupta Maurya, Ashoka followed the policy of expansion. He made friendly relationships with many countries, relationship with across Asia and Europe. He also sponsored Buddhist in missions to a number of countries. He ruled for nearly 40 years. He was one of the most successful and famous monarchs in Indian history. Ashoka was also known as Piyadashi or Priyadarshi. The Kaling War, 261 BCE. When Ashoka became the king, Kaling was the only kingdom which was not under Mauryan control. Kaling was important as it controlled the land and sea route to South India and Southeast Asia. In 261 BCE, Ashoka waged a war to conquer Kaling. Ashoka won the war, but the cost was too heavy. About waged a war to conquer Kalanga. Ashoka's 1 lakh soldiers and civilians were killed, including 10,000 of the Mauryan Empire. Ashoka was so horrified when he saw the violence and bloodshed and the destruction that he decided not to fight any more wars. He is the only king in the history of the world who gave up conquest after winning a war. Ashoka changed from a conqueror to a spiritual leader. Ashoka embraced Buddhism and renounced war and violence. He enforced the principle of ahimsa non-violence as a state policy and banned violent support and hunting of animals. He banned forced labor and freed thousands of people in war-ravaged Kaling from forced servitude. He initiated friendly relations with states across Asia and Europe and sponsored Buddhist missions to these parts. He undertook a massive public work building projects across his empire. He, however, continued to maintain a large, powerful army to keep peace. The rest of his rule, 40 years, brought lasting peace, prosperity, and harmony to his empire and made him one of the most admired and respected monarchs in Indian history. Mauryan administration. Mauryan administration can be divided into four divisions: central, provincial, district, and village. The administration of the city of Patliputra was separate. The Mauryan Empire had an efficient administrative system. It functioned at four levels: central, provincial, district, and village. Number first, central administration. The king was the supreme authority in this. He took all important decisions. A council of ministers, Mantri Parishad, assisted him. The various branches of administration, such as agriculture, defense, revenue, security, etc., were under officials called Amatyas. Number second, provincial administration. We know from the Ashokan edicts the names of the four provincial capitals. They were Toshali in the east, Ujjain in the west, Swarnagri in the south, and Takshila in the north. Each province was headed by a Kumara or royal prince. The prince ruled the provinces as the representative of the monarch. The Kumara was assisted by Mahamatya Prime Minister and a Mantri Parishad Council of Ministers. District administration. Each province was divided into a number of districts. The head of the district was Pradeshtha. He was assisted by junior officials such as Yuktas and the Rajukas. At the district level, some important functions were survey and assessment of land, collection of revenue, and maintenance of law and order. Now, in village administration, each district consisted of many villages. The village was the smallest political unit. Its head was Dharmadaksha. He was responsible for collection of taxes, keeping records of birth and death, and other law and order problems. He was answerable to the Pradeshtha.